two, one. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to another exciting film journey here on Inside Movies Galore. I am one of your hosts, but tonight we are continuing our 5 years of being here online, and I believe this would be the second or third choice by you, Tammy. Why don't you tell us which film that we're going to be discussing tonight?
Yeah, this is my third choice. It's called Black Christmas. It's a 1974 movie, and it's about excuse me, some sorority sisters are making plans to go home for the holidays, and there is a killer amongst them, unbeknownst to them, in the house with them. We have some casts. Let's see, Olivia Hussey, John Saxon, which is one that people probably know, Margot Kidder,
Andrea Martin,
Andrew Martin.
If you don't know Margot Kidder, go watch Superman again.
Or the Amityville.
Yeah, but Superman.
Okay.
Claire Dulier, I believe, who from 2001: A Space Odyssey.
Yep, I was just going to mention that one. Yeah, let's see. Anybody else that's pretty much on there? I think those are like the main ones that everybody knows. So, yep, it's set back in the it's from 1974, and anybody let's want to go into first time watches. Let's start with you, Brandon.
Well, it's kind of funny because we were talking about an article today that had come out comparing the 2006 remake with the 2019, and the title was Original versus Remake, totally leaving out this movie.
Bomb.
But I originally checked this out after seeing the 2006 remake, and I loved the 2006 remake. I hope we cover that on here as well. But I was told, hey, yeah, if you like this one, you should check out the original. Because I was just starting to get into horror around that 2006 time frame. So I was like, okay, I'm getting interested in it. My first impression, I'll admit, when I was comparing it with the other one, I was kind of bored because the pacing is much, much, much slower. But I think that as time has gone on, not only do I appreciate the history of it as being, one of the first slashers and one of the major inspirations for Halloween, for instance, it also has a lot of stuff about it that definitely has grown on me over the years. So I enjoy having it. One day I'll upgrade from my DVD copy, but I still really am glad that I've gotten to watch it, and I love most importantly the history behind this. It's just such a fun thing.
Okay. I also forgot to mention before, that was directed by Bob Clark, and the writer for the screenplay is Roy Moore.
Yep, and Clark went on to do A Christmas Story and Porky's.
Okay.
Yep. Such very similar films.
Okay, so we'll move right down the line here. Dave, you want to go next?
Sure. I actually saw this one first years ago. I'm not exactly sure when, but I had heard about this after I had I was into Christmas horror at the time, and I know I'd seen Tales from the Crypt, the movie, which had a Santa Claus coming and killing a husband and wife duo or whatnot, and they redid it in the show. But I also had seen Silent Night, Deadly Night around the same time too. So these were films that came out around that time, but Black Christmas is pretty much the one that started it all, kind of like, because now it seems like you check around every corner and there's a Santa Claus killing somebody in a Christmas horror movie. So, I like this version of the Black Christmas specifically for the POV, the POV ness of it, where you actually see like everything from the view of the killer, and that's, I think, pretty much what kind of like has influence on horror a lot, after this movie. So that is why I like it. And there's just something about a killer that is technically inside your place and you don't even know it. So but I enjoy the film, and every time I watch it, it just gives me a chill down my spine. Not really that it's scary anymore, but just the fact that these girls do nothing about it until like halfway through the movie. So, but that being said, it is cool to see Margot Kidder in an earlier role. Olivia Hussey get her debutante debut in films. So
Actually, this is one of Olivia Hussey's later movies because she'd already done Romeo and Juliet prior to this.
Right.
Okay. I thought that this was the one that she became known for, though.
Nope, it was Romeo and Juliet was her breakthrough. That was late 60s. I know.
Okay.
Right.
That was Franco Zeffirelli's version of Romeo and Juliet, if I'm not mistaken. But
indeed, yes. And I believe he directed her again when this a couple years after this, she ended up playing Mary Magdalene. Interesting pair of roles on either side of this one.
Although she had quite a few horror movies after this that earned her reputation as a scream queen, including the 1990 version of It and Psycho, and as Norman Bates' mother in Psycho 4.
Okay, yeah.
Huh.
I just knew it was like a big to do for her, and even though she'd been in like roles before, this is the one that stapled her to me. So, but yeah, I enjoy it. And who's next? How about you, Forrest?
Definitely not a first time watch. I think the first time I found out about this movie was, because I spent, when I was in middle school, I spent a lot of time on horror sites and internet message board and horror sites and message boards, and I came across, and this title came up frequently in discussions and review and articles and reviews that I would read. I remember around Halloween time going to Hollywood Video, and it showed up under employee, and I was looking at staff recommendations, and that was one that came up frequently. So I finally got around to I just got around to renting it on VHS. And I knew I had already known Olivia Hussey from Psycho 4 and It, and Margot Kidder from Superman, and John Saxon from Nightmare on Elm Street and Enter the Dragon. So and also I also found out that this is from the same director of Christmas Story and Porky's, both of which I had already seen by then, because I was 13 years old the first time I saw this. And I thought it was and I was pretty blown away. It was like, the small indie horror. Well, the small indie horror film. Although I don't know if you could call it indie, because it was financed by Canadian taxpayers. And
it wasn't early. It was kind of an early Canadian film, though. So
yeah,
it definitely was outside the system.
I mean, there's a whole documentary about Canucksploitation, like about how Canada was a hotbed for exploitation,
Right.
because of their generous film incentive program back in the 70s and 80s. But I thought it was really, but I really liked it. Great atmosphere, great cast, very disturbing. Like it was kind of just so disturbing. Like, this killer, they call and make all these weird voices. We don't know who it is. We never see his face. We just hear his voice, or all these voices. All you see from him is an eye, like a burning red eye. And that's it. And his hands too. But yeah, we don't know who he is, or what he's doing, or what he wants, or anything. Like this makes him even. I mean, compared to Michael Myers, yeah, we see. I mean, he's around. You see him fully, like a full figure, and then you've got killers, boogeymen like Jason and Freddy, who are fully fleshed out, who are fully flesh and blood. We know who they are, and but this character, whom at this point is pretty much known. We only know him as Billy. It's just he's just so disturbing, and I think, and also I like that we don't ever. I did find it also interesting that we don't. So I'm sorry, I'm kind of losing my train of thought here, but we don't know who he is or what he wants. But I think that was really unique. Not many other slasher flicks attempted did this. And it was also, but there's also a lot of humor peppered throughout this movie. And considering Bob Clark went on to do a lot of comedies after this, that makes sense. And also, you've also got Andrea Martin, who was also a very prolific comedic actress, even though her role in this movie is not very comedic, unlike Margot Kidder. And I remember, and also because I was living in Utah when this movie came out, not when it came out, but the first time I saw it, I was living in Utah, so knew a lot of Mormons. So when Margot Kidder tells her roommate Claire that the Mormon Tabernacle Choir was making their annual obscene phone call, I just died laughing at that part. Like, I remember going. Actually, I've seen this movie in theaters several times over the years, and every time I go to see it, the audience just it starts laughing and cheering at that part. I was also when the dead mother, Mrs. Quaife, I believe, no, Mrs. McHenry, she and Margot Kidder just getting plastered throughout this whole thing. But then there's also the subject of, it touches on the subject of abortion and women's rights. Definitely ahead of the game in that regard. There's just so much to like about it. Although I will admit, though, the ending of this movie always bothered me, just because there's one aspect of it that didn't make sense. But I feel like I might be jumping ahead of myself if I get into it now. But yeah, this is for me. For me, yeah, this is for me. Been this is one of my favorite slasher flicks, and it's for me. It's one of my must watch Christmas. It is one of my. It's been one of my must watch Christmas movies for the last 21 years.
Okay. Well, thank you. And then we'll move on to Jake.
All right. Um, yeah, this is not a first time watch for me, obviously, because I was on the last discussion we did on this one. But it's I also kind of this was not my introduction to Bob Clark movies. I had grown up on A Christmas Story and I had seen the Porky's movies, so this one was a little different for me, and it was kind of fun. I had also already seen Halloween, and there a
In
lot
here,
of stuff that directly borrowed from this. And of course, yes, I was familiar with Olivia Hussey through Romeo and Juliet. I was familiar with Cara Delia through 2001. I was familiar with Margot Kidder through Superman. So it was kind of fun seeing all of them in these different roles. Um, and I'm excited that Romeo and Juliet's finally getting a Criterion release in February. That'll be cool. Uh, and one of the ones sitting unopened on my shelf that I really want to watch, Hussey was also in the Agatha Christie's Death on the Nile, the Hercule Poirot film, which starred Peter Ustinov as Poirot. And you got Bette Davis, George Kennedy, David Niven, Jack Warden, Maggie Smith, Angela Lansbury, Mia Farrow, etc. That is a stacked cast. I can't wait to see that one eventually. And this might be my excuse to say, okay, I'm going to go ahead and put that on now that I have this fresh in my mind. You know what I mean? Um, and because of the new Death on the Nile that came out this year. But anyway, I cannot swear to it whether I feel like Brandon might have shown me the '06 version. I can't swear to it.
Oh, I know I did.
So yes, so that would have come first before this one as well. So I really was kind of coming to this one backwards. But
yes.
I did watch it for the discussion, and I got it last year or the year before from Shout Factory's Shocktober sale, and I watched it last year during the Halloween season. And my copy has slight tracking issues, which annoys the crap out of me. But it's the collector's edition, so it has a crap ton of special features. So this time around, I not only watched it, but I made time for one of them, which turned out to be almost as long as the movie. But there's one on there. I think it's called the Black Christmas Legacy or Legacy of Black Christmas or something. That was actually a pretty fun and informative documentary. So I'm glad I got to watch that. Not I could have it could have been better, but it was interesting. You got to see a lot of these people reflecting back on it. They had archival interviews with Bob Clark included. He was, as we know, killed very suddenly and unfortunately.
Plane crash.
Yeah, no, it was a car crash, wasn't it?
I thought it was a plane crash.
I think they said in the documentary that he was killed by a drunk driver.
Yeah, it was a car. You're right. It was a car crash.
Yeah. So that's it was interesting to see that, and I look, I enjoyed having an excuse to come back to this one. It really is an important historical one because of its importance to the slasher genre. But it's also a fairly entertaining film. It is a little slow moving, but there is some good humor scattered throughout. Seeing Margot Kidder play a foul-mouthed sorority chick is
Yes.
kind of amusing, where she teaches the dumbest post sergeant on earth
Horatio.
yes, it's a new exchange.
Oh God, Nash.
Yeah, so it's kind of fun. I wouldn't rank it among my all time favorites, but I could see this being one I'd watch every now and then, either for Halloween or Christmas, because it works for both. And actually, I think Brandon was talking about just looking at a list. Like a couple days ago, I saw a list of like the most underrated Christmas films, underappreciated. And of course, Klaus was number one, which I fully agree that's underappreciated. And they had Ernest Saves Christmas on there, which I agree. You know, there were a couple that I agree, but friggin' White Christmas was number two. And I'm like, there's no way. But I had to respond. But I was like, I gave them 4, and this was one of the 4. I was like, underappreciated Christmas film.
It is.
Definitely works.
Yeah. Oh, by the way,
Yep.
back on the remakes, because so I did not get
Yeah.
I actually did. So I saw the original movie first, and then saw the remakes later on. Later on. So it seems like I'm just wondering well, I guess. Why not? Because it seems like everybody else. It seems like a lot of people here are coming in like from one of the remakes, and then they came back to this version.
I saw the remake for the first time in spring, whereas I saw this a pretty long time ago.
Okay,
I had a very hard time getting a hold of a copy of the remake that was unrated.
Yeah, and although also I forgot to mention the Canadian accents in this. Like this movie is very, very how Canadian this movie is. I mean, those Canadian accents.
They talk about that in that documentary I watched. They were talking about how Canadian the movie is.
Yeah.
And they kind of put some little touches to make it seem like it's an American movie. But they're like, but no, really, if you pay attention, it's really Canadian.
Oh yeah. I mean the accents, the scene where one of the boyfriends is has a hockey practice.
Exactly.
Post Sergeant so made me think about Jim Varney just a little bit.
Okay.
If you put Jim Varney up against the Post Sergeant, they somewhat look alike.
Ernest would have talked rings around him, though. Dumb as Ernest is, he is weirdly clever. And I think he would easily do that guy's job better than he did. But that makes me think of like when he dresses up, especially as the old woman. If he had dressed up as the old woman and come into that police station and talk to that I would love to see that now.
Okay, is that all you have, Jake?
Oh yeah, that's it.
Okay, Dustin, how about you?
Well, I first saw this after being introduced to it in 2012 during the little renaissance I had of being introduced to the genre. I don't remember which one it was, but it was on that. Was it AMC or Bravo's 100 Scariest Movie Moments? Like I can never quite remember.
I feel like this would be probably. I feel like AMC would probably do it.
Or was AMC? Well, somebody that
I don't know. I feel like I just have a hunch that AMC would be more AMC's thing.
Like it almost doesn't matter who made it because I got so many ideas for stuff to see from that. And Black Christmas was one of them. And so the first time I saw it, I was pretty happy with it. Like it felt like something I'd seen before, but that was because it's not quite a template for most horror movies the way Halloween is, but it was the template for Halloween. And it seems to, how much of an influence it had on Halloween seems to really depend on who you talk to and on what day and what they feel like sharing.
Yeah.
Let's put it that way, because I've heard multiple versions of the story. It's like, oh yeah, Bob Clark was like, do it. And then John Carpenter later is like, oh no, yeah, it was my idea. Yeah. And it's like...
And then I've heard
way, and it's like, you know what? I don't mind. Just whatever.
And then there's rumblings that it was that Halloween was initially planned as a sequel to Black Christmas, but I don't know if that can be if anybody can verify that.
I think it's lost to time, honestly.
Yeah.
In
But-
the interviews I was watching with Bob Clark, he definitely was claiming that John Carpenter got a lot from him, but changed pretty much everything but the title. And he's like, maybe I should have asked him for credit for that.
Oh, but anyway, so I was really impressed with it, especially how creepy it was. I mean, this was before I knew really a lot of horror, so kind of everything was like that to an extent, especially as I went through like all the classics like this one. But this one was darker than most of the stuff I had seen up to that point yet. And I don't know, a good amount of it stuck with me. Rewatching it today, I have that Shout Factory Blu-ray, and it looks there are two of those documentaries, Black Christmas Revisited and Black Christmas Legacy, which at some point I should go and rewatch the extras, I think. I might do that if I get the 4K version of this when it comes out. But when I watched it today, Joe Bob's Red Christmas from 2019, this was one of the movies, so I thought it'd be fun to rewatch it with Joe Bob. And he did mention the car crash that killed Bob Clark. So that's how I remembered Car Crash. And it still strikes me how effective it is. Like, it is quite good. It's very to the point. Like, it doesn't really waste a lot of time. And like Forrest was saying earlier with Billy the Killer, he's almost more of a shape than the shape.
Yeah.
Like he's basically just a shadow. Like we never even see his whole body.
Okay. Is that all you have to say then, Dustin?
I'm just gonna keep praising it, I think, really, because it's so good and it's effective, like still even now, when maybe its effects look a little cheap or non-existent. I knew about the remake, but it was, like I said a moment ago, it was actually very difficult to get a hold of the remake because there was never an unrated Blu-ray of it released in the United States.
Which is strange because all unrated DVD releases were all the rage back when it came out.
Yeah, well, it came out at a time when studios would put different stuff on the Blu-ray and the DVD, thinking, oh, people will just buy both, and it's like, no, nobody's gonna do that, you idiots. So there were a lot of movies that kind of got caught in that crossfire. Like, I think House of a Thousand Corpses is probably a really good example of that.
Right.
Because there is a lot of footage on the DVD that is just not on the Blu-ray and was never ported to the Blu-ray.
I got lucky on that unrated because I got it around the time it came out. But yeah, I would love to see a Shout Factory release of the unrated cut of the remake.
Of 2006? Yeah, absolutely.
I know I have the 40th edition of the Season's Grievings Black Christmas, which was, I believe, before the Shout Factory release came out. So,
yeah, I finally got to see the remake like earlier this year. Like, I tried to watch it for Christmas last year, but I just got kind of like sidetracked. And it didn't get to happen.
Okay. Moving on to Kroll.
Yeah, this is first time watching me. Never seen the sequels or anything. As a matter of fact, I started watching the 2006 version, got about 10 minutes into it, and then I saw Dustin's comment about this being a 1974 movie. I'm like, oops, this ain't 74. So I shut it off and found the 1974 version. The 10 minutes I saw, I really liked the sequel. First thing you see her, watching a porno of her getting banged by this guy. So that was pretty cool. This one obviously doesn't have any of that, but does have Margot Kidder, and I'm a fan. So I think she did a great job in the movie. She was comic relief. She was funny. She was smoking a lot. I looked her up because I hadn't heard anything from her in a long time, and I
Yeah, she
found
just
out
passed
that
away.
she passed away in 2018. So, but she was still active up until 2017. So, she's still out there, still doing stuff. Last thing I had seen her in was Smallville, a small role. She played alongside of Christopher Reeve, bringing them together again, which was great. But yeah, I enjoyed the movie. First time watch. I guess my skin's on too tight because it wasn't that creepy to me, but yeah, I enjoyed it. I may watch it again. I may try the 2006 remake again because that seemed interesting.
Okay. Well, it definitely was not the first watch for me, but I do remember the first time I saw it, David had brought it up and asked me if I'd ever seen it, and I said no, and he was telling me the whole thing about, this is, you know, um, like you guys were talking about with Halloween and everything, that this is kind of like what started, the horror genre of like for holidays and all that stuff. This was the start of it. So he's like, you have to see this. So I remember that's when I watched it the first time. Um, and I liked it. Yeah, I did think in parts it was a little slow. I think it is actually very creepy since you do not see the killer. I think that makes it even creepier because we're so used to our normal slasher movies and stuff where you may not see their face, but you at least see them. You know,
Right.
Exactly.
so by not seeing him at all, you see his feet and you see his eyeball and his hands.
And I
That's
think
about
it
it.
makes it even creepier that the phone company in which they were trying
Oh
to
my
figure
God.
out where the fuck the
Calls are coming
the
from.
Yeah.
calls were coming from was this big monstrosity of a machine that they had to like follow the line like several rows
Right.
down
Yeah.
just to figure out where the fuck it was coming from.
I mean,
Well,
Well,
that's
what
how
was
things.
it?
That's
if
how
you,
things were then. You
I mean, if you
know.
had made this movie the way it is, the way it was back then, I'm sure if
Yeah.
you made this movie now the way it was back then, they would have figured out who they would have figured it out within like a second.
Well, yeah,
Yeah.
David had mentioned why did it take so long for the girls to report it, and it's like, well, back then it wasn't easy to do it. So you don't
Yeah.
run and call the cops after you get one phone call. You wait till you get a few of them and say, hey, I'm being bothered, because
Yeah.
it did take a lot for them to figure it out.
Mm-hmm.
So
Right.
so I guess what we should move on to the storyline, which we've basically somewhat
Mm-hmm.
covered already. But yes, you have your sorority girls. Everybody's getting ready to either celebrate there or go home. And um, the first girl that's when they are,
I
what
believe her
starts it
name was
all
Claire.
is,
Claire Harrison. Yep.
Claire.
yes, she goes upstairs to pack. And all of a sudden, the next day, everybody realizes they haven't seen her since she went upstairs to pack, and now her father's looking for her, and because she didn't show up, and then the boyfriend gets involved, and yes, we have that nice spectacle at the police station with Margot Kidder's character.
Fellatio.
Right.
Yeah, we do have to mention that her character actually was like making fun of her like before she went upstairs too. Like,
Yeah.
Yes.
Because Claire's father, Mr. Harrison, played by James Edmund, is very clearly a shall we say a stick in the mud.
I would say no nonsense.
Very no nonsense.
Very conservative.
Yes, very conservative, very square in a sense, and I know and from my college experience that the people with parents like that sometimes were the ones who went wild when they went to college, but not always.
Yep.
And Claire definitely seems like the one that she wanted to get. She didn't go crazy the way that Margot Kidder's character was, or even some of the others. She seemed like kind of, I guess, the quote good girl of the dorm, if you will.
She had all those posters in her bed. She had all those posters in her bedroom.
Right. Which actually is kind of funny. That the well, yeah, that's true. She did have some interesting decorations up.
Yes.
But it is interesting
trying
though.
to hide.
Yes, and we'll get to that in a little bit. But this film kind of set a lot of tropes, but one of the tropes that became a thing that this movie does not set is the idea that the more I guess looser characters will be punished, and the more virginal ones are likely to survive. This one, it's more scattershot.
Yeah, nobody's safe.
Right. So that was one trope that waited and didn't come out in this one. But I did want to mention I did want to mention real quick, Tammy, you made the point in your introduction, and I agree with it. But actually, it was the actress who played Claire, Lynn Griffin, who specifically mentioned this in that documentary. And I really agree with what she had to say, which is the idea that when you have an unseen threat, it could literally come from anywhere. Like if you know what you're dealing with, you know what you're dealing with. And it can be scary. It can be worrisome. But if you literally have no idea what the threat is, it's that much creepier and scarier. So I happen to think that the ones where they do leave the threat off screen for a while, I think that's a great way to build it up, and this movie does do that well.
Well, I think a part of the buildup of this too is you start to realize pretty early on that the threat is actually in the house.
Yeah.
And they are totally unaware of it. But we know that the threat's there because we're watching this.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, but spoiler alert for you people who haven't heard that yet or figured it out or don't know us well enough. They never do find Claire. The whole movie.
Yeah.
We know exactly where she is.
No, the woman does. The woman does before she gets killed.
No, that's something I did like about the remake is that they actually looked at the freaking attic.
Yeah.
Which, I'm sorry, the police were all over the building and they neglect the attic when they know that they've got people missing.
Yeah.
From the building, and you leave the most obvious place alone.
Well, yeah, you're supposed to be searching.
I mean, they already checked they already checked the basement, so you might as well check the attic.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, if you're supposed to search a place, you search the place.
Exactly. It's but then again,
that's one thing that bothered me. That, and also like at the end when Claire. Well, again, I'm sorry. I apologize for jumping ahead, but so Claire's father. I mean, Jess is incapacitated while Claire's father faints, and so the cops decide to take Claire's father to the hospital and leave Jess to fend for herself alone in this house where they just found a bunch of bodies.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, and you got to think about it. The mindset of the police was normally if there was something happening, especially to a young woman, it was obviously the boyfriend at the time. So once the boyfriend was killed, then that was it. We found our killer, boys.
Right.
We're done.
Which is kind of funny because
Well-
in earlier things, the boyfriend was they told the cops the boyfriend was here when those phone calls were being made. He was here, so how could he have been making the phone calls?
He was making. I'm guessing he was making them on the den mother's line because they had shown that there were two
Yeah.
lines in the house. Though I will say this one has also started another trope. We talk about tropes. The trope of the incompetence of law enforcement.
Yes.
It's very prevalent in these. Either they're slow to respond or their response is terrible. One with the other.
Match.
I think often at times in a horror movie, one of the first things that you can trope, and obviously you're kind of expecting it, is the stupidality of the police force in these films. The mindset of the cops is not exactly
The stupidness.
I mean, when she goes in
spot
there,
on by the book police,
when she goes in there and she gives the phone number to the cop, and she does the fellatio number there. That just, but
You love these words that Dave makes up.
But then again, when you're going back to the 70s, most people probably weren't learning those words necessarily. So,
Right, but it's still stupidness.
well, yeah.
And there is no POV-ness.
there is if I create it.
But there isn't.
But anyways, where are we now?
Also, let me actually, since we're in the early part of this movie that introduces the den mother, whoever it is.
Oh,
I love her character. She has managed to take hiding bottles of alcohol to a new level.
Yeah.
Indeed.
Back in those
That's
days,
for sure.
with sororities, the reason why you would have one there is to keep the virtue of the young women in that dormitory intact. And seeing as she doesn't really care that much about that, I really don't see the need for her to hide those, though it is amusing about where she does.
Miss Mac is she's a fun character.
Yeah.
And yes, she definitely is a paragon of virtue. There's no question.
I think I made a comment to David about that. It's like, man, she's got a bottle of liquor like every place, every room, and every place you turn around. You know?
Right.
Living room,
And
bathroom,
most of them are empty.
a closet.
Toilet.
Yep.
The book's the best.
No, I say the
The
toilet.
book?
The toilet. It's like, oh my god, she's like, she has like, oh, like of all, like she's got at least a bottle stored in at least every room, but like the toilet, wow, that's.
Yeah, I just, that particular thing. I remember watching it with Kim. I was hoping that she would come on with me for it, but when she did that with the toilet, I saw Kim just like.
The thing is, though, you got to imagine that probably a decent amount of the germs were killed off by the alcohol, more
That's
than
true.
likely.
And on top of that part of the toilet's like the part where it's where all the new water comes in, every time you flush. So.
Oh, and she had the liquor in the tank.
Yeah.
Yeah, your stuff would probably be okay in there.
Yeah. Especially that looked like it was probably just regular old whiskey or whatever. But if it was like some 101 kind of stuff or Everclear,
And it was a screw top at that, so most likely what she was getting out of that was probably pretty, sanitary overall. Yeah.
I don't know. Even though it came out of the tank where the fresh water is and everything, I just still don't think I'd want to be drinking off of it just because
Oh
It's
yeah.
a toilet, you know?
Yeah.
Hey, it depends on how desperate you are for the alcohol.
Right. But then again, we alluded earlier to the scene with her and Mr. Harrison in Claire's room, and that was just some fun times. Like there's that picture of the two in like laying naked on the lawn and what looks like a peace sign,
Yep.
and she sees it and just puts her hand.
And the old lady flipping the bird.
It's like I don't think that was effective. And then of course she leaves the room first, and of course he just looks at it and he's like,
Oh.
Well, yeah, she puts her hand right over the middle, like over the ass part, and that's it's like you don't think he gets the gist of it, really?
Where'd everybody go? So quiet all the time.
well,
Well,
Okay.
what?
No, it just sounded like the audio cut out.
yeah. But yeah, so at any rate, I guess the where are we moving along on to another character or what? Or
Well, I
Where are
guess
we?
we should move on to that they are looking.
But
The police finally are actually
Mhm.
concerned and looking for Claire, and they
Right.
also become aware of a 13-year-old child that is missing. So then they
Mhm.
organize this big search, and girls from the sorority go to help out with that, and so is Claire's father is there too.
Well, and isn't what's her name's boyfriend having a piano recital or something like that?
oh yeah, Peter, that's
Yes.
Yeah.
Jess's boyfriend.
Yeah,
And her
and
baby daddy.
she actually tells him that she's pregnant and she's keeping the child.
Right. So yeah, that's what I was wondering about with the characters, because we haven't even really talked about Jess or Peter or Phil or any of them. But yeah, Jess seems to be. What would she be? She looks like she has kind of a leadership role in this particular dorm. At the very least, she seems to be the one who acts as the point person for them. Uh, and she seems fairly responsible and level-headed, but then yeah, you find out that she's knocked up, and she has a conversation with Peter, who turns out to be a complete dick, so he's appropriately named. uh, and yeah, I don't know.
Well, if you would call him a complete dick, he didn't want he he
I
told her she couldn't make that decision without him,
and
and
that yeah. This is one thing I give this movie. This came out in the early 70s, and it's a slasher film, but they had was then and is still now a major political flashpoint in this movie. That's a major discussion between two characters, and I'm like, I give them props for going there,
Yeah.
and for the way they handled it. And I know there probably will be differing opinions on which one was right and which one was wrong. But I really like the way they handled that conversation
Right.
in the movie, and I give them props for doing it.
I believe this is like what, a year or two after Roe v. Wade.
I can't remember the exact date. I think you might be right.
Yeah. Granted, this is a Canadian movie, but it just seemed, but it was just the overall political climate across in the Western world. So
I don't know. I guess in my opinion, I don't think he was being a dick by wanting to be involved in the decision.
I think he was a dick about threatening her after.
Yeah, he was
getting very
definitely
possessive. Getting very possessive.
Yeah, I mean, I agree that he should. I think he should be a little bit in the discussion. Like they should at least discuss it, see if there's any other options. I mean, I do believe in the woman's choice, and it is her body, but still, at least you told him about it, so try to include him into the decision. But he doesn't need to be a dick about it. He needs to let her think on it and just be there for her either way.
Well, okay, so Roe v. Wade was 1 year before this, so yeah, that is clearly that must have been on their mind when they did that. And I guess if we go back off from the idea of right or wrong or whatever, definitely we have a conservative versus progressive view here, because she very definitely is more the progressive view, and he is very much the conservative. Oh, you're pregnant, we're getting married. That's very much the more conservative view of it. And yeah, so needless to say, they had an argument.
Yes.
But yeah, and I will say again, like I kind of touched on it before, or maybe I didn't. I can't remember. I think Olivia Hussey is a strong actress, and I really like her performance here. General, most of the performances I thought were good in this movie, but I think she handled it really well.
Absolutely.
Some of the others, Margot Kidder was more fun in the movie, but she did a great performance. Overall, they were mostly good. And even though I did not like Peter, Keir Dullea did a good job with that role.
He did, yeah.
Yeah, I think I agree with you on that. I think you got to see everybody's personalities, most definitely in this,
Even I would say even Andrea's boyfriend, who is Andrea Martin's boyfriend, the one who was dressed as Santa Claus, who is not, and I repeat, not Gene Shalit, even though he looks like him.
Oh, the Santa with the foul mouth?
Yes.
Yeah, he definitely needed to watch his mouth around those children.
Let's see. Yeah.
Has anybody mentioned the sheriff yet, though?
Oh, you mean John Saxon?
Yeah, he was great. I meant the detective, not the sheriff.
He was
he seemed to be the only smart one of the bunch, and maybe the other detective, but the other detective just laughs his head off at Deputy Doolittle.
Well, yeah, the one that was behind the desk was like,
oh, he was an idiot.
Oh, yes.
Nash. Yep.
Yeah, Nash.
Fellatio. What's his phone number? It's a new extension. When she gave the number, I was laughing my ass off. Like, obviously, this cop has no clue.
Well, we're at the point now where they are looking for Claire. They're looking for that little girl. And during this the whole time, the house is getting these obscene phone calls. And I mean, he's not just saying nasty things. He's coming. He sounds like a girl. He sounds like a kid. He sounds like a maniac. And he says all kinds of weird stuff. And it's just, I don't know. The first phone call that comes through, I even told David, after the first minute or so, the first phone call that we see, actually, I would have been like, well, forget you, and hung up. And they sit there and they keep listening and keep listening and keep, it's like, why are they sitting there and they keep listening to this? Why don't you just hang up the phone?
Yeah, I didn't understand why they just kept listening to it, especially since he was obviously saying like some obscene stuff in between the gibberish.
Some of them were trying to just
curiosity.
Like the main one of them was just kind of making fun of it, or just trying to really trying to draw him out. It's just embarrassing.
I think that was Barb that was trying to do that.
Right.
And but that's understandable. Sometimes if you can catch it right, then they will stop if they get shamed out of it. Doesn't always work.
Right.
Definitely not in this case.
Does that ever work?
And that was one of the interesting kind of weird elements of the film about us, like Claire getting off right at the beginning. We know it happened. We know, and people figure out the next day that she's missing, but no one knows what happened to her, and no one really knows for sure that something happened. So we know when we hear the phone that this is probably much more dangerous than y'all realize, but they have no way of knowing that. So that's kind of a neat little effect that they have there.
Well, at least when they do finally report the phone calls, you know, the sheriff, he does get things started and does, go get the guy, set up the phones, gets everything,
Mhm.
But he's like, you got to keep him on the phone. Got to, then I understand why they're keeping him on the phone. But the first phone call that we actually see, it's like, why are you keeping him on the phone?
Yeah. And of course, the sheriff doesn't, well, a lieutenant or whoever, doesn't even actually take them seriously, or doesn't come to their aid, I guess you could say, until they've been dicking around with, or Nash has been dicking around with them at the desk, and they, I think it's Claire's boyfriend, right, that happens to know him, and they hear him talking, and Fuller comes out and says, "Hey, what's going on?" And then they tell him, and then he looks at Nash, is like, "Seriously, you didn't think anything of this? You didn't think this was worth looking at,
Yeah.
Oh yeah, because the boyfriend came in and he's like,
Yeah.
like you said, he must have known the boyfriend because he threw like a big fit, and got like everybody's attention.
Yeah. And then later, we keep mentioning that the fellatio bit because it was kind of funny. But I really love the follow up to that, which you've got the Fuller and the other guy who's back there in his office with him are both just kind of cracking up at Nash's stupidity. And then when he explains, it's a new extension or whatever. And I think it was Fuller who's like, Nash, I don't think you could pick your nose without written instructions.
Well, then he tells the other detective, "Do not laugh. Do not laugh."
Right.
I'll demote you back to some monkey or something. I don't know what he said, but he said he'll demote him. And then the guy chuckles anyways.
The other thing is when they do finally decide to tap the phone, the way that they tap phones, I know it's remarkably different these days, but my goodness, that was a
lot of work.
We went to a lot.
No wonder it took so long to tap phones back then.
I mean, yeah, they could have saved. I mean, like I said, if this movie had been made now, they probably would have saved themselves a lot of dead bodies.
Well, yeah, because they tapped the phone and then it rang. And not only was it had to ring through the police department, and then it had to go somewhere else for him to sit here and try.
To track down the phone lines and then look at the phone line that's actually active with that number. That was that's a procedure.
Yeah, you had to physically go and find it, and so it took time.
But I love that. I love that part of it because, yes, it marks the time period, but it is something historical. I mean, how many other movies do that actually show the process in full?
Not many.
Yeah.
I mean, we know it takes time from people and movies, but we never actually see them.
Yeah, we don't actually know why it takes so much time.
Yeah, that's quite impressive.
Well, yeah, nowadays we got color ID. So,
Yeah, it took a lot of equipment to trace a phone call back then.
Law enforcement was much harder back then.
so anyways, yes, they did. They got that all set up, and the first phone call that comes through on it, she wasn't on. It wasn't on long enough. They didn't get anywhere. So, in the meantime, everybody is looking for the little girl and for Claire, and they unfortunately find the little girl dead. And so that, at the same time that they find the little girl dead, the girls come back to the house and let them know that they did find the little girl, but no, they haven't found anything about Claire yet. In the meantime, the father of Claire comes back to the house and they're all having dinner. And Barb is in one of her stupors.
Drunken stupor.
And just really being quite really doing quite embarrassing things in front of, Mr. Harrison.
I believe this was where she gave him the biology lesson, right?
About the
On
turtles.
turtles.
About the turtle.
Did you know that a certain breed of turtle can mate for 3 days straight? Can you imagine going boop, 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 for 3 days straight? She goes, I went to the zoo to watch it, but I didn't watch it for the whole 3 days because I went over and watched the zebras.
They were done much quicker. Right.
She's
Yeah.
like, 3 days, I'm lucky if I get 3 minutes. So the one girl is trying to get her to calm down and telling her to go to bed, that she's drunk. Go to bed. So that's when she finally goes upstairs.
That's like that other info of turtles that we kind of heard from something else recently, where they there's a certain breed of turtles that breathes out their butt.
Sea turtles, yes.
Mm-hmm.
It's more like the skin is thin enough there for like gas exchange. It's not technically like breathing out of their butt.
No, but they do it especially when they're hibernating, and the sea turtles do. I know after we heard that, we had to look it up because we have a turtle. So, and he's an aquatic turtle. So, of course, we had to figure out if our turtle breathes through his butt or not. Okay.
Well, you would know if it was butt up instead of head up, I guess, in the tank when you got the water.
Yes, David went over there and said, Frankie, do you breathe through your butt?
I don't think a slider can do that.
No, but I don't know where did we hear that from?
It was some movie we watched or something.
No buts about it.
All I know is we were laughing when we heard it.
So now for the one that was drunk a lot of the time, do they actually give any foreshadowing to her kind of asthmatic stuff before she has the attack?
I don't know.
So.
They do in the other film, but in the remake. But I didn't think it felt like it came just on out of nowhere when she had that attack.
Yeah, I don't remember anything before the attack on her either.
Other than, I guess her medicine was as much alcohol as possible.
Could be. Yeah, and let's not forget the part where she was trying to get a little kid inebriated.
Oh, yes.
God, yeah, that was hilarious.
How did they get away with letting little kids see that Santa in that house? That I do not get.
It was the 70s.
Yeah, that's the
Right.
I mean,
And
they didn't
Mr.
even raise the drink.
Harrison's
Back my parents were like were teenagers when this movie came out, and back then, like, it was very easy for minors to go into a store and get alcohol. Like, you could just say, "Oh, hey, I'm getting beer for my parents," and they'd say, "Okay, no problem."
Well, Mr. Harrison's on the phone too with his wife, I believe, and he's watching this, and he's
Yeah.
fumbling what he's trying to say to his wife, watching her give this kid alcohol.
That was hilarious. He's like, I think the bugger's drunk.
Get them while they're young.
that
Okay,
was
well,
Have we gotten to the part where they actually do find the missing girl in the park yet?
yeah, we already got that, and the girls are back.
I love how they had the person die in the park, and you got these two dudes who've got their guns sitting there, and they just like, hey, I heard that somebody died in the park. Are y'all all right? And they just keep looking around like, eh.
Oh, them two were like Tweedledee and Tweedledum, man.
They hung there for
A little bit.
they needed to be.
I don't know if I would have opened the door for them idiots when they did. Okay, so I guess we're up to what the next day, and the house lady is getting ready to leave and everything, and she's looking for Claude, her cat.
Actually,
God damn it, Claude!
I don't think the house lady lasted that long, did she?
The dead mother,
No.
Yeah.
No, she was supposed to
there for the
leave,
dinner.
and before
Yeah.
while the taxi was outside, she heard something up in the attic or something. And
Yeah,
once
she heard
went
the
there-
the cat up in the attic.
Okay. Okay. All right, because when they went out for the search, she was saying I might be gone when you get back. Yeah, and that's why they didn't miss her, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm.
They thought she had just went on her little
Yeah.
getaway
Yeah,
to her
so
sister's house.
she goes looking for kitty, and
Mm-hmm.
why you would go look for the cat in the attic, I have no idea, because you think that the cat can climb a damn ladder.
Well, and she said something like that, like, well, Cloud, how'd you get up here? Something like that.
Well, she
Yeah.
didn't, and she couldn't. So yeah.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, and then she
gets
she
the
got a hook in the face. That was so
Oh
lovely.
man, yeah.
She got
So
hooked
she
by it.
actually finds Claire.
Yes, briefly.
Yes.
And then they shall never be parted again.
What I don't get is it shows her like at least one shoe, if not both shoes, falling off when she got pulled in there, and nobody noticed that this shoe was just sitting there.
Unless Billy was able to get down there and grab it before anybody came up.
He might have, yeah.
He might have.
He got around that big house pretty good. He very well could have just done that.
Again, I feel like the 2006 does fill in some holes that were left here, like having him going through the inside of the house and stuff like that. I really do think that they're kind of good companion pieces, because I could see a lot of that stuff probably happening in the background and just being assumed that that's what's happening. Like, he's probably got like little secret passages throughout the house, things like that.
But we don't really know that in this one, you
Yeah.
don't really know who he is and know anything about him. Where on the remake, you do.
Oh yeah, they definitely.
They don't give too much away on the remake. Yeah.
The remake's not very subtle.
Oh no, the remake's not subtle. It's just a
Very
gore fest, but it's a fun gore fest.
But you have a lot more information
Oh,
on
joy.
the
I mean, with the remake, I like the cast, and that's the nicest thing I will say about it.
Now, I mean, it had its share of a couple of surprises towards the end, but it hints,
But it's got a lot more information that we didn't have in this one.
and they did do a lot of they did do some work with it. Like they had some of the original cast. They talked with some of the original people behind. And it was some there. I mean, they even had the whole unicorn killing thing, which I kept trying to figure out if we were close to, because that was something I was looking like, oh my gosh, I did not remember that, but I guess they did that in both movies where they killed with the glass unicorn horn.
Yeah. That was in both.
Oh yeah, I guess that's true. Yeah, because Barb had that little sort of glass menagerie of around her bedside. Yeah.
Okay, so now the house lady has gotten it, and everybody is still on the lookout for Claire, and
Hmm.
the police are looking really at Peter for causing the problems. And before this, we seen that Peter evidently did not do good at his recital, so he took it out on the piano, which
Yeah.
that
That was
doesn't
pretty
look good for
hardcore.
him. When the police start looking for him to talk to him, that doesn't look very good for him. And then they end up overhearing a phone call between Peter and Pam, I believe, right? That the officer hears that phone call, and that really makes him wonder about Peter. So he asks Pam like 20 million questions that she doesn't want to answer.
Pam.
So
Oh yeah. What do you
Are you,
mean, Jess?
are you having troubles figuring out where you are?
well,
Well,
let's see. At this time, I believe they put the officer out in the car watching the house.
we should also note. I think this is kind of related to what you were just saying. Uh, when Jess gets one of these calls, something really wigs her out, and Fuller realizes that something has wigged her out, but she won't tell him what. And it's because that this Billy or whatever had used some of the exact phrases that Peter had used with her,
Oh
and I
yeah,
was
I'm sorry.
like,
I was calling her Pam instead of Jess. Sorry.
Which is why when
and-
Peter shows up
and-
later, she ends up being like frightened
yeah,
because she actually thinks that it might actually be him.
yeah.
And
Fuller seems
Wasn't
pretty convinced
wasn't it
of it.
that this isn't a work that you just get rid of or something like that, is what he said,
Yeah, yeah.
as far as the pregnancy goes.
well, and the John Saxon's character, he had come in and seen the piano practice area smashed in too, due to Peter smashing the piano in. So, and he had just seen that just before he got the answer of the phone company saying, "Yeah, the call is coming from inside the house," you know. So,
And at that time, the one girl, I don't remember her name. She had the glasses, I believe.
Phil.
She went to go check on Barb because Barb had that asthma attack. So she went to go check on her to see how she was doing now. And well, that's when she gets it.
Mm-hmm.
Because Barb has already gotten it with Glass Unicorn.
yep.
So now
So
all that's left in the house right now that's alive is Jess.
And Billy.
And
And-
Claude, probably, right?
We never saw the kitty cat anymore.
Yeah,
Well,
I don't know.
I don't know. He's probably still climbing on Claire's corpse in the attic.
but yeah, at about this time is when the officer realizes that yes, the call is coming from inside the house, and he calls Nash and tells him to tell her to walk. Just tell her to walk out of the house. And don't say anything else. Don't answer any questions. Nothing. Just tell her to walk out of the house.
and he got frustrated.
And he tells him not to blow it. Well, he blew it.
Yep.
Right. Now,
So,
in I guess in his minor defense, and in Jess's defense, if you know this guy's an idiot and he's trying to tell you to do something without telling you why or without giving you any indication, oh, by the way, Lieutenant Fuller would like, or it sounds like it's coming from Nash, and you know he's an idiot, are you going to take him for his word? It
No.
is kind of an awkward situation there.
yeah,
Well,
yes.
It is possible that he doesn't know how much of an idiot he is.
I think that's clear.
So, of course, unfortunately, Jess goes looking for the girls
Yeah.
that he thinks are still alive.
Yeah. Basically, if I remember correctly, I think Fuller explicitly told Nash explicitly, do not tell her the calls are coming from the house. And when he loses his patience, that's why he finally says, for God's sake, the calls are coming from the house, And so she, of course, does the thing of, oh, I should go check on everyone. So, yeah. It might have been smarter for her to just walk out the front at that point. Who knows?
Well, she was gonna, and then she thought differently when got that fire poker.
Yeah.
And decided she was gonna be the hero and go look for the girls.
Yep, which was obviously the wrong choice.
Yep, because then the chase was on.
Yep.
It's just the same as when a purse snatching happens. It's your life that's more important. Let go of the fucking purse.
Hell no, you ain't getting mine. I'll beat your ass with my purse before you get it.
Then shoot you first.
Sounds like Dave had a few of his purses stolen.
No, my mom did. And she didn't want to let go.
Well, in Jess's defense, she wasn't thinking about her purse. She was thinking about her friends. That's a little more important, we might think.
No,
Well,
her life is more important. No offense. Friends, if there was an entire possibility of them, of at least one of them being alive, no, my life is more important. Sorry.
Well, she was screaming her head off and nobody answered her. To me, that would have been, well, I gave you warning. Goodbye. I mean,
Yeah.
she was literally screaming and none of them answered, and they didn't answer.
And
So,
she could do that, and then she'd be like, this is a hell of a time to be playing hide and seek. I'm leaving. Screw you guys. I'm going home.
so yep, then the chase is on. She ends up locking herself in the basement. And
Meanwhile, her
You-
dingus boyfriend decides that it would be a good idea to break into the basement because, reasons.
but she's got it in her head that thanks to the cop that he is the one.
I mean,
So
again, he broke into the basement while she's running for her life. I don't think he did himself any favors there.
That was pretty stupid. Yeah.
no, but she wouldn't have thought the way she thought about him if the cop wouldn't have been making her think that it was him that was the bad
Quite
guy.
possibly.
So then next we see after they've had that confrontation in the basement is, well, he's dead. The cops finally come to the rescue. They find their cop outside dead. And they come inside and find Peter dead.
Now, in all fairness, though, I will say this: they leave him, the boyfriend, to be an amazing red herring. I mean, if we weren't sitting here watching this on the outside, I would say if I was the police, I would definitely be pegging that boyfriend as the killer, because he really does come across as that kind of person. He's got a lot of instability. He's very impulsive. I mean, the fact that the man was like, nah, I'm done with school. We're just going to settle down and have a family. I mean,
right.
He was just very impulsive. The thing that he did with the piano, there was a lot. And the movie was trying to lead you to feel like he was the one to suspect.
But you keep forgetting, he was there, standing right there with them when the phone calls were made.
I see, though.
Well, we know that,
but the police don't know that.
Police don't know that. Yeah.
She told them that. She told them that he was.
And who's to say that? And who's to say that he wasn't working with somebody else at the time? That's the other thing. I mean, he could have been the one committing the murders, and the killer was and being the killer, whereas somebody else was making the calls. But again, also,
haven't you seen Scary Movie?
And let's talk about part 3 that we go back to. The police are also incompetent, so you've got to put that into the equation as well.
Yes, I mean, leaving Nash aside, there was the issue we mentioned earlier that no one thinks to check the attic. I mean, heck, if the building was full of secret passages, a good search might have turned one of those up.
Yeah.
That's
true. I mean, I watch a lot of stuff with cop movies and all that stuff and everything. So yes, my way of thinking would have definitely been to check the whole house if I was a cop.
Exactly.
And I would have actually still had that in the back of my mind, though, about that she has said that he was there during the phone calls. And that would have been nagging at me about how could he be it if he was there? And I would have been wondering, like you guys said, if there was somebody else too, but I wouldn't have totally centered on him.
right.
I guess
Well,
if I was a good cop, I wouldn't have totally centered on him.
and not to mention, there's another simple thing of, even if they think they got their guy, they got their man, there's still the question of where the hell Claire is. And you would think basic, decent police work would be like, okay, so clearly this person has been hiding out here in this house. We've found 2 dead bodies, not to mention the body of the person we think is the killer. This girl's been reported missing, so we should probably do a thorough search of the premises just for that reason alone.
Right.
Well, like I said, they're not too bright. Even the
Right.
best detective wasn't.
Yep.
You know,
I'm
Dave.
reminded of one of Brandon's favorite gaming phrases. Let's call it a day.
That's basically what they did. They helped Mr. Harrison out because he was having medical problems, and they, you know,
And they
they
left
all
the girl alone by herself.
And I found that like this incompetence of the police is grossly shown here.
Yeah.
I mean, they don't search the house from head to toe. They're like, oh yeah, we caught the killer, even though, as you said, they have the information. But again, which again, it doesn't necessarily clear the boyfriend, because again, he could be working with somebody. But if he's working with somebody, he's working with somebody. So, you know,
Again, they leave Jess alone in the house. They leave Jess alone in the house.
yeah, that's like, if
They-
anything,
They take Claire's father. They take Claire's father to the hospital. Like, that doesn't make any sense.
all your friends have died in this house, and you're just going to leave her sitting there with all the murders there, and then not even searching the attic. I mean, like I say, for all the faults of 2006, at least they searched the place. It's
Right?
and Jess is
Spoiler alert.
totally incapacitated.
I think we're beyond the spoilers at this point.
Well,
Yeah.
the 2006 one, I haven't seen the 2006 one, so
Okay.
you're spoiling that one too.
Am I remembering correctly that they said Jess that she'd be out like at least a couple of days?
Yeah.
Well, at least a couple hours, and he
Yeah.
said you may be able to talk to her better in the morning. But
She was
Okay.
fine.
should
She
be
was
out a
fine by
couple
herself.
hours.
She was passed out.
Okay. Well, even so, they said she was going to be out for a couple
They
hours.
asked
You
the
think-
doctor to watch her.
Yeah, leave
yes,
a couple
and then all of a
people.
sudden the doctor's got to leave with Claire's dad and shit, and the cop's got to leave. It's like, what? You're just gonna leave her by herself, passed out?
Well, I guess in fairness, most any member of any sorority could possibly have. It's probably not a new experience for some of the girls in this house. Let's put it that way. But anyway, probably Barb more than the rest, but you know.
Well, I think we've basically covered the movie from beginning to end. So, let's get into production.
Well,
like
at
to
the
start
end, I'll say at the end, you have that interesting thing where the credits roll, and the only soundtrack you have is the phone is ringing
Yeah.
again. Of course, no one's picking up, but that's an interesting way to end it.
because it's not done yet.
And it ain't
Nope.
over till that lady sings, and she already got suffocated.
So, who wants to lead us off on production?
Well, as we said before, it's a very Canadian production.
Yes. The accents are very
Yeah.
strong. The accents are very strong.
Eh? Well, not quite that strong, but they're and it is I think Forrest, you were the one that said earlier that there was like some actual, probably some like provincial money maybe coming into this production.
Yeah.
But again, it was considered essentially an independent film, at least as far as American filmmaking. And I know they did not have a huge budget.
It
But
was, it was $620,000. Although I don't know if that's U.S.
Yeah.
dollars or Canadian dollars. Probably Canadian.
so
Which isn't real money, anyways.
I will say that the house that they use, the setting they use, all of it does do very well as far as production design.
Yeah.
I don't think that as far as the effects are concerned, they're not really huge effects, but they do what they need to do. And I think that sometimes we always have to look at how clever a film is with the budget, with the effects, And sometimes when you can do a lot more with less, it is an amazing thing. And this one really does that. I mean,
especially in terms of how they approach Billy. Like, definitely Billy is a prime example of less is more.
Yeah, I mean, the only issues I've ever had with this film is the pacing. Other than that, and the pacing is equal to pretty much every horror film of the 70s and 80s or early 80s. So to me, I think this one actually is the quintessential slasher film of its time when it comes to how they did it. And again, everything is believable. So to me, production is excellent for this film.
It feels very.
I agree. I think they did a good job, and I think the like you were saying, sometimes the movies are better by not seeing certain things, and it makes it better. Like, because we don't see Billy, we don't even, and that
He's the mystery.
is it makes it better,
Oh, one thing I wanted to say at one point, and I'm glad I remembered it because I think this is probably the natural point for it, is like it was mentioned earlier that we do see Billy's eye like one time, like you see him through the crack of the door or some such thing.
And also he's also a barb.
Well, yeah. And well, of course, we just looked at Ringo a few weeks ago, and that had a similar like single shot at the end, and it made me. I was just wondering, like, I wonder if the people behind Ringo were fans of this film, and if that was in any way an homage to that moment. I don't know, just food for thought.
Potentially, I could see that being true.
But I think the effects that they did in here were what was needed for it. I don't think that they needed to go any more than what they did. They got everything
Right.
to the point across, and it was, you wouldn't have wanted anything extra, I don't think.
I agree. The effects in this film were what it needed for the time, and honestly, I think the technology of its day kind of helped the film because it helped with that creep factor. Taking time to try to trace the fucking call and all that jazz. So that they had to have had hold of an old phone company to be able to show that.
The sad thing is, I actually remember those kind of phones. That's really sad. Those rotary phones were a pain in the ass.
And party lines.
Did you ever try to win like tickets when they tell you to be caller number on a rotary phone?
Yeah. It's not too good.
I think I did try that actually.
It's hard enough on a button phone, never mind a fucking rotary.
My great grandparents, whenever I would be at their house, they had two of those, and then finally my great grandpa got a phone that was a dial phone that was like you just plugged it into the wall that sat on the table type of thing. He finally got one of those in his office, and I'd be listening to the radio for something. Phew, I'd run into his office and I'd be playing on that thing. But then it still dialed slow like a rotary phone. It still did that.
For the audience that don't know what a dial-up phone is, look it up.
Boy, that's actually kind of sad that people don't know what that is.
Yeah.
I grew up with a rotary phone, for goodness sakes.
Right.
Yeah, that's what those were. I grew up with that too.
Right.
I cut my hand because of one of those phones.
How'd you do that?
Well, the metal on the bottom was like dented in, and I thought it'd be a great idea to get it out using a butterfly knife, and yeah, it didn't work quite as well as I thought it would. So I ended up getting the butterfly knife in my hand.
Ew.
All right.
That's
So
the
I guess-
wrong way to catch butterflies.
I would say as far as the music in this was pretty good.
Yeah.
I love the music. I mean, a couple of these tunes really did take some of it. You know, one of the things that we had discovered early on, but I feel like this is one that pioneered some of it, is that if you take any tune and you do it in a minor key, it makes it much creepier. And they do that with a couple of things in the background here. Not a lot, not a ton, but just enough of it to be subtly strange and creepy.
Oh yeah. I thought that the music that was on in it was good. You know, it fit with the movie. It's not, you know what I mean. It's not like they had rap music playing when it was 1954.
Well, hip hop was in its
You know?
infancy when this movie was
Yeah,
made.
that would have been a little weird. There's of course some Christmas songs in there,
Yeah,
to help set the season.
I would say I did not. I have not heard Silent Night the same way since I saw this. This is the first time I saw this movie.
But those kids were really cute singing.
Singing while there's two killers on the loose.
Right. But you do have that one lady just rush. No, get out, get going. It's like, oh, okay.
Yeah, don't spend too long at the murder house.
Anything else about the music? Anybody?
Kind of a weird thing about it. I think the soundtrack is only like 2 tracks. Because it's like part 1 and part 2. Let me double check. Somebody double check that.
I think you might be right. I know the music was by Carl Zitter, and in that documentary that I watched, he said that, when they made this film, they were kind of like, oh, we're just making a movie. They didn't really expect. He's like, we had no idea it would become as long-lived as it has been with certain groups or whatever. And he's like, if I had known this film would have taken off, I would have written more music for it. I was like, yeah.
Isn't it amazing? Some of these films that people thought would never be anything turn out to be something that's totally remembered,
Well, Wizard of Oz was panned by the critics and thought, no one would like the Wizard of Oz, so.
The late 60s and early 70s.
Night of the Living Dead. Nobody thought that was going to go anywhere.
The slasher time period, I mean, when you think about it, the 70s and early 60s and the 70s had a renaissance of kind of these types of films, but the problem is a lot of them are lost forever because of the poor film stock they were created on.
Yeah.
And it is sad how many films have been lost to history because of that. So I guess it's understandable how they might not think that this would hold to the test of time. We're just lucky enough that we got this. I'm sure that if we were to be able to have a time machine and go back, we could probably find other films that were just as inspirational to slashers as a genre as this one that no longer exist.
Well, and again, that you kind of come back to the point we've mentioned a few times, but I was going to say, but where this one is considered by a lot of people foundational. I know a lot of people cite Bay of Blood as being like the first actual slasher. We've talked before when we did Psycho, we talked about how that's sort of, some people say it is. It's not. It depends on who you talk to. But like this one really was one of the first slashers in the sense we think of today. So that was one of the reasons. I think that was one of the things Zitter was getting at was they had no idea what people would think of the movie. they had no idea how it would be received, and they were kind of swinging for the fences.
Yeah, I
Well,
mean,
they probably thought of it as being a Christmas of all things, a Christmas slasher.
Right.
How are people gonna take this? And with Christianity the way it is, is this thing gonna maybe get boycotted or something too?
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, I think that, I mean, if you look at it, other films of the time, Peeping Tom, which is one I think is totally underrated. Peeping Tom, Psycho, Bay of Blood. These films, they had pieces of the slasher formula, but Black Christmas was the first to put them all together and really run with it. So to me, I really do think that Black Christmas is the first true slasher movie as far as the genre is concerned.
And that's part of the reason I ended up watching it the first time, is because that's what David had said to me about it, and he was surprised that I hadn't seen it yet, knowing that I like a lot of older movies, So he thought I would have probably come across it. But that's how I got into it to begin with. I was like, really?
And Peeping Tom is one that we should definitely cover one of these days.
Definitely.
I
I think I saw that it was on TCM recently.
I feel like Psycho and Bay of Blood get all the credit, but Peeping Tom truly is as foundational as those films when it comes to slashers.
Who's in Peeping Tom?
Good question.
Because I believe I just came across it and I either watched it or was going to. It was on TCM.
I was lucky enough to actually have snagged an old Criterion of it, which is one of the Criterion catalog where they made the DVD, but then it went out of print. Yeah, they have I don't know if any of these are really there. Animasi, Moira, Cher. I mean, it's a British production. If I'm thinking correctly. Dustin,
Okay.
I think you know Peeping Tom better than I do.
I want to say it's from the 60s. It might be British. I'm not exactly sure.
Yeah, in the United Kingdom, it is a British film.
It is a difficult movie to see.
But it is to me, I think it's as iconic as Psycho when it comes to early slashers, and truly it should be. And I know that people who did Black Christmas, they must have had some inspiration from Peeping Tom, because there is a lot of Peeping Tom in this movie.
I personally think Peeping Tom was better than Psycho, but I don't know how a lot of people would comment for that.
Yeah, most people haven't seen it, so that's the problem.
I'll have to make sure I check it out, because I think I remembered seeing it was going to be on, and I don't think I watched it, but
I have a copy of it.
CCM was running a bunch of movies the one night, and I was like, "What's that?"
I have the out of print Criterion copy.
It's worth having if you can get that, if you can find it, and it's still reasonably priced. It's just it's sad.
It wasn't at one point in time.
Because when I got it, it was reasonably priced, but it's still sad that it's out of print, because especially since Criterion tends to try and keep things in print, it would be one I would really love to see do for a redo. But I think that with those films in the background, I really do think that elements of all three of those films combined to form this film in a lot of ways. And then this film, of course, then inspired all the greats thereafter.
All right.
I mean, this is the one that all the pieces are actually together in the puzzle. The rest are just pieces of the puzzle. This one actually has all the pieces together.
Any other comments anybody like to make on before we go to outros?
Oh, well, don't we still have to do
Favorites.
favorites?
I'm sorry. Favorite characters, favorite scenes. Okay, David, why don't you start?
Oh God. I think one of my favorite moments is when the house mother goes up into the attic, and she turns her head around and boof, she gets it. That's one of my favorite scenes in the film. I think, and I think the other one is when the dude keeps going through that massive, phone company and trying to figure out like where the call is coming from, and when he finally figures it out, the operating a room, and the final moment of revealing, yes, it's coming from inside the house, and that oh shit moment, So those are my two favorites.
Okay. How about you, Forrest?
All right, for me, oh man, a lot of good moments. There's a lot of good moments in this. A lot of good moments in this movie, but I don't know. To me, for me, my favorite parts tend to be a lot of the funny parts. Like early on when Billy is calling them up when they're having the party and Billy calls them, and Clara asks, "Do you think there could be more than one? There could be more than one person?" And Margot and Barb says to her, "No, Claire, it's the Mormon Tabernacle Choir making their annual obscene phone call."
Right.
Do you have a favorite character?
Favorite character? I don't know. It's a tough. I would say either Barb or Lieutenant Fuller.
Okay, David, you didn't say a favorite character. Did you have one?
I would say Billy. Even though you don't really see him much, but Billy is often probably overlooked.
Okay, you creepster. The cops ever come knocking on the door thinking that somebody's making calls from this house, I'll know. Yep, David did it. Okay, Dustin?
I was pretty much going to say what Dave said. Like, I'd pick Billy too, just because
You're another creepster.
he's kind of the invisible slasher in a lot of ways. Like he probably did inspire some killers, but not. I don't know. It's harder to tell because we don't really get much of his personality, other than that he's just really crazy.
I knew there was something creepy about you.
He's one of the most openly deranged killers in the genre.
Yeah,
like when he talks, he makes no sense. Yeah,
it makes no sense. But at the same time, he also gives some hints about who he might be. It's implied that he killed his baby sister.
Yeah, there is that. So I guess it's not quite like nothing that we know about him. I guess we don't quite know nothing about him, but I don't know. He's kind of forgotten about just because he's not like a big personality like the characters that we're used to.
Right, on the remake, you know a lot more about him than you do on this one.
I would say he's not a boogeyman. He's not a boogeyman that you can sell Halloween costumes of.
Exactly.
Okay. Crow.
Yo.
Favorite character, favorite scenes?
My favorite character is definitely Barb, and most of the scenes with her in it. But my favorite has to be when she's sipping alcohol to a little boy, and mentioning how drunk he is, and then of course the whole fellatio with the cop. She started that, and the whole sequence of them laughing their asses off at the idiot at the desk. So those are my favorite scenes.
Okay. Jake?
Y'all talking about this guy getting being a Halloween costume reminds me of one of the, I don't remember which Addams family it was, but I remember like with Christina, with Wednesday. What are you going as? I'm a homicidal
A
maniac.
maniac.
They look just like everybody
Everyone
else.
It's a classic.
But my favorite character in this has got to be Miss Mac. I mean,
Yes.
I like Barb. I like Jess. A couple of them are good characters, but Miss Mac just amuses me.
Mhm.
And especially her scenes with Mr. Harrison. It's great. As far as favorite scenes, yeah, I'm looking at the IMDb's description of this one. What's this? Oh, that's the number of the sorority house. Fellatio. Yeah, it's a new exchange. FE. A new exchange? Yeah, fellatio. One of the girls that was in this afternoon gave it to me. I loved his phrasing on that. We didn't mention that earlier. It's like, Nash, I don't think you could pick your nose without written instructions. And then after a minute, he's like, I know, it's something dirty, ain't it? Click on the uptake, that one.
which made the laugh even hotter, you know.
Yeah, I like that. And I'll agree, Carl, I agree with you. The scene with Barb and the little kid, I mean, it's all sorts of wrong, but God, it's funny.
Yeah, it is. Both wrong and funny at the same time.
Yes. Okay, how about you, Brandon?
Well, of course, the house mother is my favorite character. I mean, all those scenes where she finds different places to hide booze is just, it's just sticks out in my mind for this film. But as far as favorite scenes, definitely the scene where they finally trace the call within the house, that tenseness, the fact that when you see him running and racing against time as they're trying to figure it out, and then coming to the realization that he's in there with them, it's just it can't be beat for the time. Especially if you take into account the time. This is probably one of the first times that you had something like that, which it's really cool for that.
Okay.
Actually,
Well,
one other real quick one I want to add is the very end. I don't know what it is, but the fact that I don't like the implication that Jess is probably not going to make it through the night. I'm not crazy about that. But the whole idea, and again, we talked at length about how bleeding incompetent the police were. But the whole idea that the big mystery of the movie, where is Claire, is never solved by the people in the movie, that they never find her or Miss Mac, that the camera
They don't even
pans
know Miss
out.
Mac was even missing because she
Yes,
was supposed to be gone.
And the camera pans out through that window where you can see that if they even just looked up at the right angle, they would see her. It's just like the way that they ended the movie, kind of like almost as a dare of like, this is not your typical Hollywood ending. I did like that too.
okay. Well, for me, I guess I liked Barb as my favorite character because I just liked how off the wall she was. She just made me laugh.
Yep.
Right?
I think one of my favorite scenes is when she is talking about the turtles going for 3 days and she gets into this whole big thing.
And I barely get 5
everybody's
minutes.
just look, yeah, and everybody's just like looking at her, and and of course the other one when they figure out that the phone calls are coming from in the house, and that's just like that, like you said, that oh shit moment, you know. So, but okay. Well, I think that just about wraps everything up, and we'll start going to our outros. So, Forrest, would you like to go first?
Sure. My name is Forrest Bennett. I'm an independent film producer and actor based in Long Island, New York. I've got a movie coming out. Hopefully this week. I'm hoping Silent Night, Bloody Night 3, the second follow up to the classic 1972, another Christmas themed slasher flick that came out in the 70s, Silent Night, Bloody Night. It's a follow up to that. I also was recently in a movie called Amityville Thanksgiving, and got another movie coming out. It's the next entry in the Camp Blood series. You can also find me on Instagram under My Name Is Not Gump, where I do comic book pickups, and I've always got something going on. I've always got something going on in the pipeline.
Okay, that sounds interesting. And we'll go to Dustin next.
Well, I collect horror stuff, for lack of a better term. So I show my stuff. I show the things I find off on my channel at The Crypt of Horrors on YouTube. And I also have an Instagram, The Crypt of Horrors, on Instagram. That was very redundant. I don't know why I phrased it like that. Just go to my places and see the stuff I find. I was supposed to get some new videos made last week, but last week ended up being kind of miserable. But I'm back and ready to get working on it. So I have a bunch of stuff from over the course of the whole year that I've found that I'm ready to show off. So yeah, come hang out. Oh, and I'm on Twitter as DurCryptAccess as well.
Okay. Next up, Kroll.
Well, I'm Ron, aka Kroll. I enjoy watching movies and TV shows and coming on these podcasts talking about movies. This one and Delusions of Grandeur on Sundays. Also, I come on the anime podcast once a month, and I've been known to come on a few podcasts with my buddy Mo, doing a couple different things. So I'm all around. Don't have my own show, but I'm around on other people's, and it's fun. I also love to read and play video games. I'm an original nerd.
Okay.
Next
is Jake.
Sorry, my mic wasn't working. I'm Jake. I'm the co-host of the YouTube channel SeptumSin versus World, where we talk about all sorts of physical media, and it's we're big physical media collectors, and we alluded earlier to the fact that a lot of older things are disappearing, but now newer things are disappearing too, and I'm currently hopping mad over a series I really want to see that apparently Warner Brothers has decided I don't deserve to see. So yeah, we definitely love our physical media, and this is one of the reasons why. So and of course, in addition to trying to collect and watch this stuff, I do have a full-time job that keeps me quite busy, but I also have a job that is sort of my main passion. I'm a co-founder of RVA Homegrown Natives, a native plant nursery. I do also try to be involved with films every now and then. I got a couple Kickstarter projects I've worked on, and or at least thrown some money their way. And I still try to find time to come on here every week and talk with these fine folks about all kinds of movies. Sometimes very much in my wheelhouse, and sometimes not. And it's a lot of fun to see what's coming next. And of course, next week, definitely check out on SeptumSin, where we'll be talking about Ranma and Half on our anime discussion. I look forward to that too. Bye.
Okay. Brandon.
I'm SeptumSin of SeptumSin versus the World. We love physical media on our channel, and we do our best to talk about it and how much we like it. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of sad about the whole thing when we hear about series disappearing, but that's why it's good to have a good physical copy. So if it disappears, well, I'll still be able to watch it. I know I've got couple examples in my collection there. We've got our big Christmas video coming in on Wednesday. And of course, I have plenty of first impressions videos that I've been recording, which are just, well, exactly as it is. My first impressions. If I've seen a movie for the first time on a physical disc, I will throw that impression out on the internet for all to see. The most recent one was today's, where I talked about Cannibal Claws. But I'm also on a channel called Schlockaholics, where we talk about movie schlock all around the bend. This past week, we covered the 2 John Ward Axmus short films, and he was even on the channel to give us a little bit of information on the film, so that was always fun. And at the end of the month, we're going to be on, hopefully on the 31st, if we get the time together, we're going to be covering the film Happy Holidays. So some fun stuff coming up.
Okay. I'm Tammy. I'm Dave's fiance. I go on this channel and another one with him, and I talk about movies and listen to everybody else's ideas and thoughts, and I collect some stuff myself. So, we're on to you, David.
Alrighty, my name is David Streggy. I'm one of the founding fathers of Inside Movies Galore, so thank you for coming along with us on this journey that we've been having, and then we hope to bring you some more films before we hit the end of the year here. So, but I also moonlight under a different channel called Delusions of Grandeur, where I go on with Kroll and my fiance and a good friend of ours, Boris, to kind of do similarly.
He means
the same
Kroll
thing.
and his fiance, not that I'm his fiance. Just want to clarify that.
Even though,
Yeah, Kroll, you can't have him.
I don't want him. He's too hairy.
Oh, okay, Larry, whatever you say. But anyways, moving on. I also on the Delusions of Grandeur channel, I throw up some video reviews and some video content of me receiving my physical copies of things. So definitely check out the channel and check out this channel and like, share, and subscribe. And hopefully we'll be back next year with Delusions because we're taking a break there. But we will have one more, I believe, film. Tammy, did you want to say what film we'll be covering?
A Christmas Carol, and this is the FX, I believe, version.
Yep.
So,
What year was that?
2019.
Oh, wasn't it originally filmed for the BBC?
Not sure
No.
on that.
2019.
Yeah, it first showed up on FX a couple years ago, and they advertised the living daylights out of it, and I kept telling David, I want to watch that. I want to watch that.
Yeah, and it's not technically on a physical copy of any kind. So, that being said, we'll be back with you guys next week, and everyone say good night
And have a Merry Christmas.
Good night. Merry
Good night,
Christmas.
everyone.
Yeah,
Merry
just
Christmas.
me, Billy.
God bless us, everyone.
You're my fan now.